So JJ, do you remember last week we talked about how amino acids come from meat?
I do.
And end up back in our personal meat.
And it was, yeah. And it was like Lego or Tinker Toys,
Yeah,
right?
that's right.
Our body breaks it back up and builds it back up.
Well, we eat the hamburger and it breaks it into amino acids.
Yes.
Well, today we're going to talk about a specific amino acid, leucine.
Leucine. I like it. So a warm welcome to you all. I'm JJ. I am a life coach and I eat mostly meat and some ferments.
I'm Eric. I'm a novelist and I eat mostly meat and some ferments. So we're just going to get right into this. So I've titled our presentation today, I Love Leucine.
I love that.
Can you hear the music and the bongos?
Yes, Babalu.
So this is leucine, which is an essential amino acid. Now, if you remember from last week, essential doesn't mean you need it to be a human, although you do. Essential means you need to eat it in order to have it.
Right. Your body can't
make it.
Right.
So you can't make leucine. You got to eat leucine. Leucine is also a branch chain amino acid, which is something you might have heard like in the fitness realm as a pre-workout BCAAs.
Yes, yes.
And so the amino acid has this attachment on it that is the branch chain, and leucine is one of those, and it has specific functions that come along with that branch.
Okay.
And we'll talk about that in a minute.
Okay.
Leucine has many jobs, and it's interesting because every time I started going down the amino acid path, leucine just kept coming up and coming up. And I was like, well, I think I'd better pay attention to this one.
Well, when you say many jobs, I'm thinking Stomping Grapes, Vitamita Vegemin, the Candy Factory.
That's right.
All those various jobs. And of course, appearing at the club.
That's right.
Lots of jobs.
Unlike Lucy, leucine is the star of the show.
Ah.
Because, well, she horns her way in right from the very start. One of the stops that leucine makes is the pancreas and has a huge important role in releasing insulin.
Really?
Now, this might be surprising, right? Because you think of insulin, you think of glucose causing insulin to be released. But leucine actually has a really important role in this. It enters the pancreas beta cell.
Okay.
Because it's in a high concentration, because we just ate a half a pound of hamburger, which is approximately 226 grams.
Okay.
And all of those aminos are floating around in our blood, and leucine's concentration is high. And so now those beta cells are like, let's pull that in, because there's specific transporters there for leucine. And there's two different ways that leucine provokes insulin release. And they both relate to something we may have learned, some nutritional program or high school biology, the Krebs cycle.
Oh, yeah. Yeah.
And the Krebs cycle, the whole purpose of that is basically to create energy, resulting eventually in ATP that the cells use for energy purposes.
Okay.
Well, in the pancreas beta cell, that same process happens with the purpose of releasing insulin into the blood. And so glucose goes in there and it operates in the Krebs cycle and insulin's released. Well, leucine goes in there and it does the same thing, but in two different ways, which is kind of interesting. It's like, it's not an accident if it has two modes of action. Now, we're not going to go the next level deep at this stage because there's really nothing to be gained by getting into the details of the Krebs cycle. Maybe we'll look at that in another video someday.
Maybe.
So why? Why would leucine have this role? Well, dig, if you will, the picture. We are 50,000 years ago, pre-agriculture, and we have just slain a mastodon.
Okay.
And like this guy in this extraordinarily detailed and accurate historical reproduction,
Yes.
are roasting a mastodon shank over an open fire.
Of course.
And of course, we got to hold on to our spear in case the coyote wants to come and steal it from us. And we're going to eat this, and we're not going to have a potato. We're not going to have bread. We're not going to have ice cream afterwards. We're not going to have an influx of carbohydrates to provoke an insulin response.
Right, right.
And if we don't provoke an insulin response, there's no uptake of any of the amino acids in our mastodon shank.
Oh, that's a problem.
So we get a big kill, lots of protein, no carbs, no problem. Because leucine is on it. And as we've seen in 2 different modes, provokes the release of insulin.
They're poking the pancreas. Provoking it.
Exactly, which is what we saw in the previous slide.
Yeah.
So the insulin is released, and now there's more leucine in the blood, obviously. It's not just all going to the pancreas. It and all the other amino acids are in large amounts going through the bloodstream because we just ate our mastodon burger.
I just want to be clear then, remembering last week's presentation, that leucine then is in that meat.
Yes.
Okay.
In a high amount.
Okay.
And just for the record, every bite of animal meat contains all the essential aminos, all 9 of them. Mm-hmm. So its next job is to engage mTOR for protein synthesis.
Okay.
So what happens is the leucine enters the muscle cells, and leucine starts basically a chain reaction that results in this molecule mTOR activating. It's not leucine attaches to it and then it turns on. It's leucine does something else that causes something else that causes something else that causes mTOR to engage.
Oh.
It's very involved, yeah. But without leucine, it doesn't happen. Now, mTOR is very important because when it's activated in a cell, protein synthesis charges up. Let's talk about what mTOR is. It's short for mechanistic target of rapamycin. Now, what is rapamycin? Well, rapamycin is a drug found on Easter Island, aka Rapa Nui, that was found to be very beneficial in an anti-rejection for organ transplants.
And I think I've heard about it in longevity circles, haven't I?
You certainly have, because people take rapamycin because they're speculating that it will give them some longevity benefit, as it has shown to do in animal models.
Okay.
But that's a little confusing because if mTOR boosts protein production, why would we want rapamycin to suppress mTOR? Because that's what it does.
Okay.
And that is a flummoxing question on the face of it, because it seems like building muscle, good for longevity, right? Well, mTOR is not triggered until you have 2 to 3 grams of leucine in one meal.
I was going to ask about that because I feel like in the carnivore space, I've heard some people are concerned about having enough protein in one sitting.
Well, right.
To get the leucine.
And if we go back in time with our own history with carnivore, I come home after listening to a guy on Tim Ferriss or Dr. Attia, and I say to you,
we need to be eating a lot more protein.
Because this guy says you need to eat a bolus of like 25, 30 grams in order to get mTOR fired up for muscle or protein synthesis. He didn't explain the next level down that that's because you need to eat that amount in order to get enough leucine to do this activation.
Well, pre-carnivore, I thought that was crazy. Now, this is like just about a week or 2 pre-carnivore, but I was like, you have got to be kidding me. That's a lot of protein.
It seems like it, yeah.
At that time, it did.
If mTOR is going to cause protein synthesis, shouldn't I eat leucine all day long?
All day.
To keep mTOR activated to constantly be building protein? And the answer is no.
Okay.
Because muscle synthesis is anabolism.
Okay.
So you've heard of anabolic steroids that the bodybuilders take in order to grow muscles. Well, that's encouraging anabolism, anabolism. I don't know how it's stressed. And that leads to muscle growth. And that's good. We want anabolism for muscle repair and muscle growth. As we get older, We don't want the muscle loss associated with sarcopenia,
No.
because as we lose that muscle mass, we lose all kinds of things, not only our strength, but what is muscle doing? It's soaking up glucose.
Yeah.
If we happen to eat any in our diet. And it's very active metabolically. So we want it. And as a matter of fact, the more muscle you have, the more demand for protein you have. And it's a virtuous cycle. Well, anabolism or anabolism is the opposite of autophagy.
Right.
You cannot be in anabolic and have autophagy going at the same time.
Now, we did not go into this in any of our videos deeply, but you have been talking about this. Part of your whole revelation around how to eat was around this catabolic versus anabolic
That's correct.
state. So this has been floating around our household for a few weeks now.
That's right.
Some weeks.
And what are the benefits of autophagy?
Well, it gets rid of the junk cells, the zombie cells, and the senescent cells, and so that those sort of poorly functioning things are gone out of our bodies, and we're able to optimize our functioning.
Exactly. And they could be precancerous cells.
They could be.
Right. So one of the issues is if you're in this building mode with protein synthesis turned on, well, then the mechanisms to harvest the senescent and damaged cells is turned off. And so if we keep mTOR on, or we keep adding snacks of protein with leucine, we might never drop below the leucine threshold to allow mTOR to relax and the other processes to start.
Right.
And what if I want both anabolism and autophagy? Well, you've got to switch between the two through these pulses. So you eat your 25, 30 grams of animal protein per meal, mTOR turns on, muscle synthesis starts. All those aminos that came in that Mastodon burger are being used to build muscle tissue. And then leucine slowly drops down as it's being used up, and mTOR turns off, and that activation stops. And then we have a long fast, maybe while we're sleeping. mTOR deactivates, and we start to get a little bit of autophagy going. Now, obviously, if we want to really push the lever of autophagy, what do?
We do a longer fast.
We don't eat.
Yeah.
And therefore, we don't take in the leucine, and we don't, or any other amino acids. And so mTOR stays quiescent. So what was rapamycin doing? It was keeping mTOR quiescent, even in the presence of leucine, because it was suppressing its activation, and therefore mimicking the benefits of fasting and allowing autophagy.
Okay.
And I don't know if I ever mentioned it on our channel, but there was a time where I experimented with rapamycin.
Yep.
I got a prescription from our integrative doctor, and I would take it once a week. I don't remember what the dose was, but it was whatever the standard dose was. I was just curious to see what would happen. And very interestingly, I didn't really notice a benefit to it. I mean, some people report a range of benefits that they notice over time. What I noticed was lethargy.
That's what I was going to say. I wasn't sure if you were going to go there, so I wasn't going to out you. But
Yep.
I noticed that you felt like garbage for a while.
Yep. And
Every week.
And if I did any exertion during my rapamycin exposure, my recovery was terrible and I'd be really sore. Why? Because mTOR is turned off and protein synthesis is turned way down. That doesn't mean it's completely gone, but it's turned way down. And so I'd be sore. So it would take me like a day or two to start to kind of come back from my rapamycin dose. And eventually I was like, this is not for me.
And I was happy about that decision.
So the goal now is anabolism by day, autophagy by night. And that's very possible. Now, the level of autophagy is very debatable, that it's hugely significant during that short fast, but it's not non-existent.
Yeah.
Cue the Hannah Montana and the inspiration for the leucine graphic, the best of both worlds.
Yes.
Leucine job number 3, become protein.
Oh.
So remember, we ate protein. Leucine was taken out of it as amino acid. It's done all these jobs in the body, but now it's not done.
It's not done.
So mTOR is turned on. There's certainly more leucine around than's needed. And now the leucine amino acid is being manufactured through that process that we talked last time with all the mRNA, the tRNA, and then the ribosomal RNA sets up the machinery to start knitting together these amino acids into proteins that fold all up to serve all kinds of purpose. They can be protein in muscle. They can become enzymes. Anywhere there's tissue that requires protein, leucine is knitted into it.
So it's an important tinker toy.
Yeah.
Or Lego.
And so here we see leucine is with her buddies, lysine and valine and histoine and methionine and tryptophan. But leucine's not done.
She has some staying power.
Is that maple syrup you smell? Well, in this case, I hope not. Because there's a thing called maple syrup urine disease.
I've heard of this, actually.
Which makes your urine smell like maple syrup. I'm sure that was a shock to find out. But what it is, it's a genetic lack of a key enzyme that helps use leucine for fuel. So we had our food and then there's excess leucine around. Generally speaking, we'll burn that off. But if you can't use the excess leucine, you can't break it down. You're building up leucine in the system, and eventually the kidneys receive it and they will typically recycle it, but it gets to a certain saturation point. They dump it. The urine, your sweat smells like maple syrup. This is a really dangerous thing to have. And I guess it has been treated with liver transplants, but many people just manage their leucine intake because they still need some, and it functions to release insulin, and it functions in building or triggering mTOR, and it functions in building up muscle tissue, but it does not function for the next job, which is becoming fuel.
Okay.
So if you remember our brief discussion of the Krebs cycle, and I was saying that in the pancreas beta cell, leucine can go right in there and contribute to the Krebs cycle. Well, it can do that in any tissue where energy is needed. So if we're in muscle tissue and there's energy needed to lift weights or move or run or whatever, that can be broken down and it feeds the beginning part of the Krebs cycle by breaking down into one component piece of that, which is acetyl-CoA.
Oh.
And that starts a whole process that ends up with ATP being sent into the cell, and then that attaches and can bonds break and it becomes energy to contract muscle. But it can also engage with this GDH, which I'm not going to try to decipher for you. And what it does is it sort of jumps ahead in the Krebs cycle and introduces one of the intermediates of the Krebs cycle called alpha ketoglutamate. And then that goes and continues through the cycle and ends up in ATP. So it can do both of those things in the pancreas beta cell, but also in the muscle tissue. And so that's how leucine can become fuel. But that's not the only place. Because if it hangs around long enough, the liver is going to take notice and it can actually break it down. And one of the things that comes off of it is acetoacetate,
Okay.
which is used in creating ketones.
Oh.
And so leucine is a ketogenic amino acid.
Interesting.
There's one other ketogenic amino acid, and then a bunch of the others can be used for ketosis or gluconeogenesis. Obviously, it's not the primary use, but that is possible. So leucine has had quite the workout today in our body. So you may be asking yourself, where do I get it?
Right.
Here's what I had chat discover for me. So beef every 3 ounces gives you about 2.2 grams. Pork, a little bit less. Salmon, this one looks, it's a bigger serving. So it's 6 ounces to get 3.8 grams. Some dairy is pretty concentrated leucine. So it's a pretty good source. But you can see that one egg isn't going to get you there. You'd have to eat a whole bunch of eggs to get close to the mTOR activating.
And again,
purpose.
what is that number again?
It's 2 to 3 grams that you need in one dose.
Okay.
But think, what I heard on Atia's podcast long ago was 30 grams of protein, animal protein in one meal is going to get you the leucine dose you need to trigger mTOR.
Okay.
So you can get 25 grams or 30 grams quite easily.
Yeah, I'm seeing that nearly all of these are hitting that 2 to 3 gram. And that's not, for carnivore, that's not a huge serving.
Right. And I'd say you had like one chicken breast and a salad, you'd probably be on the edge. And that's what I used to eat.
Yeah.
Every day for lunch, thinking I was getting my protein to repair my muscles. And then later that day, we might have some more meat.
Maybe.
But I was not giving myself not only enough of the amino acids to repair for my workouts, but not enough leucine to trigger that mTOR response to really boost the protein synthesis. Now, it's important to understand the protein synthesis can continue without that boost, but it's nothing like when that mTOR signal gets triggered. And it makes sense physiologically, just in the same way that the insulin release is. You need something to signal an insulin release if there's no carbs around, because you want the amino acids to be taken up into the cells. And without the insulin, the amino acids just won't get sucked in as readily.
Right.
And then you want, once they're in the cell, you want them used for protein synthesis, not fuel. And so you need something to turn the switch to say, okay, here comes the brigade. Let's start the factory up. And that's what leucine does.
So as carnivores, we talk a lot about macros and moving into, how much protein are we getting, how much fat, that type of thing. And that those macros are what really makes us more healthy. And that's true. But this is a huge piece of those macros that needs to be fulfilled in order for us to be optimized.
Exactly. And you need to stop eating it, because 3 ounces of beef is pretty easy to get down the gullet as a snack.
Yeah.
And all of a sudden you might have fired up mTOR again.
Yep.
And you don't want to do that, because the idea is that ceaseless mTOR activation can also start causing the machinery to produce malformed proteins or add to tissues that might be cancerous or something like that.
Yeah.
So it's a little bit vague in my mind, but the idea is you want that quiescent, you want autophagy to be able to be active.
Now, you're not a doctor, so I'm going to ask you a question that may be out of your range.
Okay.
But I hear of carnivores who cannot eat the large boluses of food because they've had some sort of a gastric bypass surgery.
Yep.
And so they have to eat smaller meals throughout the day.
Yeah.
So what do you do?
Well, I don't know what that means in terms of actual volume, but 3 ounces of meat is getting pretty close.
Yeah.
So it just feels like it's probably possible, even if you have to eat very slowly, to get there. But honestly, it seems at that point, if you can, you kind of want to lean on dairy because you get a higher concentration to maybe make up the rest. Maybe through like a heavy cream or something. I don't know.
Yeah. Just curious what your thoughts were.
Yeah.
Again, I know you're not an expert in that, but that does seem like a bit of an extra piece of the puzzle they've got to figure out.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So I think we should probably stop our discussion of leucine there. I learned so much about branch chain amino acids and why they're used as a pre-workout that I had no idea about. And I want to talk about that at some point.
Okay.
Maybe the next video, probably not. But at some point we will. And when we do, I will have linked it. With that, get your leucine so that you can be every day stronger,
Every day more blessed.